As Modi's US visit reaches the halfway mark, the Prime Minister is set to address the crucial G4 meet today. The G4 comprises Germany, Brazil, Japan and India, so the platform will see some of the world's most powerful politicians sharing the stage. Those countries will take the lead in expanding the UNSC seats. After 2004, this is the first time that a G4 summit is being held. Immediately after that, the Prime Minister leaves for the airport and departs for San Jose in California, for where an excited Silicon Valley waits to welcome him.
After 23 years of literally negotiating in thin air, we finally have a negotiating text. A text which was approved by the General Assembly, by the chair of the IGN, by the President of the General Assembly, and it will now form the basis for the negotiations when the IGN resumes in November. So this is a very important and significant step towards having a workable text on the basis of which give and take can take place, and on the basis of which we can eventually have a resolution which will finally reform and expand the Security Council. Now 4 leaders are meeting once again to give a very strong push to intergovernmental negotiations for UN Security Council reform. That is the significance.
The question is, why is the G4 summit so crucial, comprising Japan, India, Germany, Brazil, in favor of expansion of UNSC pressing for permanent UN seats? Attempts to push for early UNSC reforms, the aim of it is to galvanize support for November UNGA negotiations. The focus to build on UNGA's adoption of negotiation text of UNSC reforms. At the UN Sustainable Growth Summit, the Prime Minister called for reforms at the United Nations. He said that for maintaining UN credibility, it was important to expand UN Security Council. The Prime Minister also spoke on empowering the poor and on women empowerment. He stressed on developed countries fulfilling their responsibilities when it came to climate change. After his big-ticket UN address, the Prime Minister held bilateral talks with Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Sweden in New York.
समूचा विश्व एक दूसरे से जुड़ा हुआ है, एक दूसरे पर निर्भर है और एक दूसरे से संबंधित है। इसलिए हमारी अंतर्राष्ट्रीय साझेदारी को भी पूरी मानवता के कल्याण को अपने केंद्र में रखना होगा। सुरक्षा परिषद समेत संयुक्त राष्ट्र में भी सुधार अनिवार्य है, ताकि इसकी विश्वसनीयता तथा औचित्य बना रह सके।
Meanwhile, good news for India and a big boost to its UN ambitions. The Australian Foreign Minister has spoken to India today exclusively and backed our bid for a permanent seat at the UN Security Council.
India's momentum for a permanent seat in an expanded Security Council, of course, is gaining momentum. I'm joined here right outside the UN by Australia's Foreign Minister, Ms. Julie Bishop. Ms. Bishop, so wonderful to see you here.
Delighted to see you again.
Thank you so much. Tell us, India is expecting a permanent seat on an expanded Security Council. How much of a possibility do you see there, and when?
Australia has long supported reforms to the United Nations Security Council. We believe that the Council should reflect global realities, and that would mean, under these reforms, that India would have a permanent seat on the Security Council. So we are certainly a vocal advocate for that position, and we wish India all the very best with its advocacy in that regard.
The written text has finally, in fact, is something that has taken shape now, and we will also see India chairing the G4 summit meeting at a prime ministerial level for the first time. All 4 aspirants of the UN. How is it going to play out?
Well, that's a very exciting alignment, and I hope that we will be able to achieve reform. Prime Minister Modi has been a very successful Prime Minister of India. He had a wonderful visit to Australia recently. He's very fondly regarded in our country. But this focus on UN Security Council reforms will be a very important milestone for India, and so we wish you all the very best.
Just one final question. Here, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is addressing at the Sustainable Development Summit, and perhaps, the Western countries would particularly like to hear on what India has to offer in terms of assurances on climate change. He's possibly going to make the splash announcements only in Paris, but what would be the expectations that Australia have at the moment from India?
Australia is looking for a global agreement, and we recognise that different nations have different priorities and agendas, but we are looking for a global agreement, so we would expect that India will play its part.
Thank you so much for speaking to India today once again, Ms. Bishop.
It's been my pleasure. Goodbye.
Absolutely. So the Australian Foreign Minister there in Australia has been one of the permanent backers for India as far as that permanent seat on an expanded Reform Security Council is concerned. Here in New York at the UN headquarters with video journalist Ashok Bhanot, this is Smita Sharma for India Today. Well, at the Sustainable Development Summit during the 70th session of the United Nations General Assembly, Narendra Modi presented to the world what he thinks is a vision for a better tomorrow and a better future. Clearly, there were no splash announcements as far as India's assurances or declarations on climate change are concerned. Those cards have been kept safe, perhaps, for the climate change conference later this year in Paris. But Narendra Modi there assuring the Western world, the globalized community, that India has been doing its share when it comes to climate changes and the challenges as well, that it is trying to move away from fossil fuels to renewable energy, the target of 175 gigawatts of renewable energy, but that it's a collective responsibility when it comes to dealing with climate change issues, and that the Western world and the developed world should not essentially only expect the developing nations to do their bit. But Narendra Modi also saying that as far as the sustainable development goals for 2030 are concerned, at least 15 out of the 17 goals are already being rolled out in India, be it through the Jan Dhan Yojana, Manrega, or even contentious plans like the right to food security, an issue which has divided views amongst the ruling and the opposition parties back home though. So delivering his speech in Hindi, it was of course a positive speech where Narendra Modi tried to sell to the world India's cultural and spiritual legacy and history.
2015 की जो सुरक्षा परिषद है वो 1945 की जो जियोपॉलिटिकल रियलिटीज हैं उनका आईना, उनका प्रतिबिंब नहीं हो सकती है। उसमें सुधार आना आवश्यक है, उसमें विस्तार आना आवश्यक है, और तभी जो सुरक्षा परिषद है वो सक्षम हो सकेगी कि जो आज के आधुनिक चैलेंजेस हैं हमारे सामने हैं, साइबर सिक्योरिटी का चैलेंज है, इंटरनेशनल टेररिज्म का चैलेंज है, उनसे हम निपट सकें। सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल और जनरल असेंबली के बीच में जो तालमेल है वो निर्धारित किया जाए, और कुल मिलाकर इस मुद्दे पर एक गंभीर चर्चा हो, ताकि जो 70वां एनिवर्सरी यूनाइटेड नेशंस की हम लोग मनाने जा रहे हैं, जो शुरुआत हो चुकी है, 1 साल चलेगी वो, उस दौरान हम ये बहुत बड़ा एक जो है मूलभूत परिवर्तन यूनाइटेड नेशंस की व्यवस्था में ला सकें।
We're after diplomacy and tough talk in New York. Modi will head to the Silicon Valley on the West Coast. Here, the Prime Minister will interact with the biggest names in the technology business. Modi has meetings lined up with the giants of the industry. Today, he will interact with the CEO of Apple, Google and Microsoft. The much-anticipated visit will also give Modi an opportunity to use the world's high-tech capital to promote his plan to transform India into a hub of innovation. Modi's arrival will mark the first time an Indian head of state has been in California in 33 years. Meanwhile, with 1 day to go for the big Namo show in California, excitement amongst members is reaching fever pitch. Techies from all over the West Coast are preparing to descend at the SAP Arena in San Francisco to listen to Modi. Total of 18,000 people will assemble inside the SAP Arena, while roughly the same number of people will be watching Modi's speech live on giant screens at the lawns outside. India Today caught up with the key organizers.
Joined now by some of the key people who are organizing this big Indian community outreach. Thank you all very much for joining us. I want to start by asking Vijay Simha Andrabag about how excited is the Indian community about the fact that the Prime Minister is coming here, because most Indian Prime Ministers in recent years tend to go to Washington, they go to New York, they go back to New Delhi. This is the first time somebody is coming to Silicon Valley.
Every Indian in this Indian diaspora is certainly very excited, because no Prime Minister has visited for Silicon Valley, and obviously we have been seeing Prime Minister Modi from a distance, and when he is coming here, it is like everyone is frenzy about seeing him.
Okay, and what do you all make of the work that the Prime Minister has done so far, and what does this visit of the Prime Minister mean?
I think as observers, looking back at India, I think the Prime Minister has clearly set a vision and a mandate that seems to have gotten the community to understand that there's hope for a rising India. For observers in the United States, we look at this as a recognition of the fact that living in America, there's got to be this great sense of pride that a country of 1 billion people is becoming both a geopolitical and a geoeconomic power. Coming to Silicon Valley certainly is a recognition of the fact of the disproportionate contribution the Indian American community has made. Understanding that the Made in India and the Digital India message that Prime Minister Modi wants to bring is flattering, but at the same time, it's just a great sense of pride. It gives this community this hope that in America the immigrant journey is legitimized because we're recognizing that India recognizes the growing contribution of Silicon Valley.
The benchmark was set by the event at Madison Square Garden, which was followed by big events in Australia, big events also in China. What makes you think what happens here at San Jose is going to be any better?
It's not a question of better. All of them are as important to the Prime Minister as any other event. The question is about the excitement. The question is about the pride that people feel for hosting the most popular Prime Minister we have had since independence.
Techies are very difficult to get hold of. Unlike, say, people in Dubai who are blue-collar workers, easier to get hold of. How difficult has it been to encourage people to come and attend the Prime Minister's speech?
So it's a very interesting question, right? When you have someone you really love, admire, inspire, it's not difficult. So the techies are very difficult to get hold of. Definitely they are not interested in the politics. But Narendra Modi is not a politics for them. It is someone they can resonate with. It is someone whose vision is they are dearly waiting for that. So someone who can be pain that seeing that where currently India is. And here is the leader who not only has a vision, who has a successful track record, and they have so glued into that this is the person who can transform the India where it is to from developing nation to the developed nation. It takes when they go India, they see that it's not getting developed for years and years and decades and decades. Now today the initiatives that Narendra Modi has launched, whether it's a Make in India, whether it's a Startup India, whether it's a Clean India, whether it's a smart cities, all these things, they are resonate with us.
Are we seeing excitement also amongst the younger members of the community, or it's only the mostly older members who are more keen?
No, it's across the board. From young to old to professionals to people associated with a different, every language or culture or faith, everybody across the board is very excited to welcome our Prime Minister.
Last year there was novelty. Now that the Prime Minister has been in office for 16 months, do you think a certain amount of incumbency is catching up with him? Is the sheen wearing off?
No, I don't think Madison Square Garden was novelty. I think Madison Square Garden was a recognition of the fact about the growing influence of India and the fact that the Honorable Modi, Prime Minister Modi, had clearly come back with a vision. And I think that's what mesmerized the world. I don't think the mesmerization has ended, frankly, by the sheer magnitude of the attention from Silicon Valley and leadership across the United States is clearly a recognition of the fact that there is a growing attention to India's rising influence. It's clearly the opportunity, substance, backed by people, an agenda that clearly has the ability to transform not only Silicon Valley, America, India, and create jobs, economy, and uplifting the middle class. That will never wear off. From community of all stripes of life, Khandarao is absolutely right. The tapestry of people, the involvement of people is unprecedented. It's not novelty. It's the hopes and aspirations of an immigrant community followed by a growing country, a strong country, a growing country with a leader that has understood that brand India is the most significant opportunity that we have. And this is why all of us, professionals, self-employed, are coming back and saying, let's be a part of this historic opportunity.
It's interesting that none of the excitement seems to have died down in the least. People still as buzzed, as excited about the Prime Minister's visit here. We'll of course be at hand at the SAP Center in San Jose, covering every twist and turn of the Prime Minister's visit to Silicon Valley. Thank you all very much for joining us. Thank you.
Well, even as the suspense surrounding Modi-Nawaz meet in New York continues, Pakistan has introduced a new irritant into the bilateral ties. Provoking India, Pakistan has complained to the UN Security Council, alleging that India is planning to build a wall along the line of control in violation of UN resolutions. Pakistan's ambassador to the UN, Maliha Lodhi, has written 2 letters dated September 4th and 9th to the UNSC in this regard. In the letters, Pakistan has alleged that India plans to construct a wall along the LOC to convert it into a quasi-international border. But Pakistan seems to have scored a self-goal, as it has quoted dreaded terror commander Saeed Salahuddin, who is a global terrorist. Reacting to Pakistan's letters to UNSC, India has said that it will respond to this in an appropriate manner. Meanwhile, India has said that it will give a response to Pakistan if Nawaz Sharif raises the Kashmir bogey during his address in UN General Assembly. A senior Pakistani diplomat in Islamabad on Thursday had said Sharif is conscious about the importance of Kashmir and would raise the issue at the UNGA. Sharif is scheduled to address the UNGA on Wednesday.